Well, if you've been watching the news, you know that voters in Britain have had their say, and they've said a resounding yes to Brexit and to the Conservative leader, Boris Johnson. Johnson has been re-elected as Prime Minister, and his party has increased its margin in the British House of Commons by almost 50 seats. The Labour Party has suffered a crushing defeat, and the Scottish National Party has emerged as the clearly dominant force in that country and the third party in the British Parliament. So what does it all mean for Britain, for the European Union, for the future of the United Kingdom, and for Canada? Those are big questions, and to mull them over, we're joined again by Catherine Barnard. She's a professor of the European Union and Employment Law at Cambridge University, but she's joining us from Trento, Italy. Professor Barnard, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Lovely to be with you.
Okay, when you spoke to my colleague Peter Van Dusen at the beginning of this week, you predicted, and your prediction has turned out in spades. You said that what to watch in this election would be traditional northern ridings where the Labour Party had so much support, but they stood to lose a lot because those seats are also Leaver voters who are more likely to vote Conservatives. How bad was the loss for Labour? How big was a victory for Boris Johnson?
The loss for Labour was really devastating. I mean, seats which have been held by the Labour Party for the best part of 100 years have gone Tory. And these are seats which are in mining communities, which suffered so badly under Margaret Thatcher when the mines were closed, have gone blue and have gone to vote for Boris Johnson. Now, the explanation for this is twofold. I think one, absolutely about Brexit. These areas were heavily Leave voting. But also there was deep suspicion about Jeremy Corbyn himself. Now, the Labour Party say it's all about Brexit and there are mixed messages on Brexit. But a lot of people are saying on the doorsteps, people are saying they just don't like Jeremy Corbyn. And so the voters held their nose and voted Tory, many of them for the first time.
Okay, the Scottish National Party, I mentioned them. They've made huge inroads. They're now massively dominating the Scottish scene, and they've replaced the Liberal Democrats as a third party in the UK Parliament. What does that mean for the future of the United Kingdom? I mean, that's a big question.
It is. Now, of course, Nicola Sturgeon, leader of the Scottish National Party, committed herself to calling for a second referendum in Scotland. The thing is, she needs to get the Westminster Parliament's permission to hold that referendum. And it's very unlikely that Boris Johnson will agree to it, because if you remember, the full title of the Conservative Party is Conservative and Unionist Party. And it's unlikely that Boris Johnson will want to be the Prime Minister responsible for breaking up of the Union. However, he'll be under tremendous pressure because in Scotland has become a nationalist, Scottish nationalist territory. And so you've got this dichotomy. You've got Scottish nationalism in Scotland and English nationalism in England, and there the twain will not meet. You know, Hadrian's Wall suddenly will acquire a new meaning.
Mm-hmm. What about, I mean, we're very sensitized to that. You know, the nationalist movement, a lot of the, say, Quebec nationalists and separatists watch Scotland with interest. What about Ireland? We know that there were a lot of tensions in terms of Brexit and Ireland and the famous Irish backstop.
Absolutely. Ireland is really the one to watch. So what you see is the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party, is the party which has predominantly held power in Northern Ireland, losing seats, including their deputy leader lost his seat. And there is now openly talk about a united Ireland, something which would have been unthinkable 20 years ago.
It sounds as if Boris Johnson, while presiding over getting out of the EU, is presiding over a very, I don't know, fractious and volatile situation in the United Kingdom.
That's absolutely right. And I mean, the next 4 or 5 years are going to be extremely difficult because not only has he got to negotiate the future trading relationship with the EU, our nearest and largest trading partner, but he also says he wants to do trade deals with, for example, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, all of which require considerable resource. Meanwhile, he wants to reform the National Health Service, put more money into education, and also try and keep the fractious union together. The one thing he has got on his side, of course, is a huge majority. So he will no longer have the problems that Theresa May had and he himself had before he called the election of getting legislation through Parliament. Parliament will wave through virtually anything that he proposes.
I was going to ask you, though, you mentioned the trade deals. Canadians are watching, as you mentioned, because once Britain has left the EU, the next order of business will have to negotiate free trade deals, as you mentioned, with the United States, Australia, Canada. Mr. Prime Minister Johnson has promised to be done with the EU negotiations in a year, and then he can turn his attention to the United States and Canada. Is that even realistic? Should we be holding our breath, or is this years away?
Well, he says it will be done within actually 11 months because that's when the so-called transition, which is what we will go into after the end of January, comes to an end. And he says he won't ask for an extension on the transition. But the reality is, as you know, the trade deal between Canada and the EU took the best part of 10 years to negotiate. So the only way that it can realistically be done within 11 months is either it be quick and dirty, so just focusing on goods, which will be very bad for the UK economy because the UK is predominantly a services economy, or he lifts an off-the-shelf model, which he's unlikely to want because the Prime Minister has talked about having the best-in-class trade deal, or he's going to have to ask for some more time and thus extend the transition period, contrary to what he's put in his manifesto, because it's more complicated than he thinks.
Canadians watching from afar, are we going to continue to see this, I don't know, I was going to say soap opera, but this drama of going back to Brussels and then back to London, or is it going to be more, I don't know, more sudden and more definitive? Because there was always those extensions that we've been watching for the last year.
Nothing about Brexit is straightforward. For your viewers who are enjoying this, they've got months and months of this to come, probably years, because even if we leave with a very quick and dirty trade deal on goods, the reality is we will realise that that's just not working for us, and we will come back for more. So we can be talking about this forever. I bet you're looking forward to it.
I don't know about that, and I don't know about your characterization of whether we're enjoying it, but we'll let you go through it. I want to thank you very much for helping describe and walk us through what's going on. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Lovely to talk to you.